time I had 1-year-old twins at home. I was yearning for that community, for being able to learn from other women, to have that encouragement in our days when things feel mundane and monotonous, and where do we go for joy and encouragement and that community? And I really felt like that was missing. And at the time, I would have loved to do an in-person conference. Like that was what, like I want to be in a room with a group of women, but it wasn't feasible. I had 1-year-old twins.
This is the Special Needs Mama in Business podcast. My mission is to empower you to advocate for your special needs child from a place of hope. I do that by sharing stories of other families that have been on this road before you, discussing alternative therapies, and talking about how you can have the time and money you need to care for your child by owning a business. Are you ready? Let's do this. Welcome to this episode of Special Needs Mama in Business. I'm so excited to be introducing a guest to you today, Jami Balmet from Young Wife's Guide. I have been following her podcast, business, blog, everything for years, and she's kind of the inspiration to all of this. So I'm really excited to introduce you all to her today and to share everything that she's been doing, and excited to share with you what she has for you this year. So welcome, Jami.
Thanks. I'm so excited. I'm really excited to dive into all this stuff today and chat.
Yes. So first, just to kind of like help the audience understand a little bit where you come from. A lot of my audience has kids with special needs, and your situation kind of seems to be a little bit backwards because you had a lot of kids, but they were all fairly healthy. But in all of that, you had to advocate for yourself quite a bit in all of that. So could we talk about that just a little bit, just so that we can kind of all feel like we're on the same playing ground a little bit?
I don't have any special needs children, but I did have a lot of babies all close together. So we have 2 sets of twins, and our baby girl, and our twins are all boys. And so I had all 5 of those kids within 4 years and 3 weeks. So just barely 4 years, we had all 5 of those, which is really rough on your body and just physically, and just, all the craziness, as you can imagine, with 5 children in 4 years. And so for me, I really did have to become an advocate of myself and taking care of myself, and really making sure that I wasn't running myself into the ground first and foremost, trying to take care of everybody. And it's just been a long journey, I think, of really learning how to take care of myself spiritually, physically, emotionally, so that I can turn around and take care of all of these other little people that are in my life.
All the little humans.
Uh-huh.
So with hormone issues, it seems like in my experience that generally to just walk into my PCP, unless like one of the obvious hormones is really off, they kind of just shrug you off. Was that your experience? Did you have to really advocate to get a doctor to listen to you and run the tests that they needed to find the problems?
Well, so I knew going into this that just walking into like my normal OBGYN or a normal doctor, they were going to completely shrug it off. Like they would be like, you have 5 kids, of course you're tired. A normal doctor is not going to run all of those tests. You may find a rare one who will run certain ones, but I knew straight away that just, going to a normal doctor wasn't going to do much. So I actually did a ton of research and found a more naturally minded doctor. He was just a regular doctor, but someone who specializes in women's hormones from a more natural perspective. So I specifically sought him out first and went to him. And then he knew all of the different hormone panels to pull. And he did. He pulled everything. He pulled all of my hormones. He pulled all of the different things you have to look at for thyroid. So if you go to a regular doctor, they might pull one aspect of your thyroid, and that looks fine and normal. There's nothing wrong with you. I don't know why you're tired. But if you actually pull the full panel of your thyroid, you start to see other issues that are there, and someone who can actually interpret the results. So he was able to pull everything. And I had weird things that I just would have never known to start correcting. Like my body just like does not make testosterone. I would have never thought that that was an issue for me with low energy. You don't think about that as an issue for women typically, but that was one of my big issues. And I would have never realized that without actually seeking someone out who was going to pull those full panels. And I also knew to ask for those ahead of time to say, are you going to pull all of this stuff? So that when he did call for the blood work, that I knew he was actually pulling everything, so that we could get a really good look at what was going on.
I'm about to start diving in a little bit deeper on this. I've been seeing a nurse practitioner who specializes in functional medicine. So like she's tested a lot of things, but it just kind of seems like my issues are still above her pay grade because she's like, I believe you, something is wrong, but I don't know what the next step is to start really looking. And so I'm looking at having to upgrade to a provider that's a little bit more well-versed in this. Do you have any suggestions to help me or anybody else in the audience listening that wants to pursue this a little bit further of like resources of how to find a provider that might be able to speak this language a little bit better?
Yeah. So I think the biggest help is to get into like natural Facebook groups that are in your community, that are for your county or for your city or for your area, and just start asking for recommendations. Start asking people, hey, this is what I need, and just start collecting, even if it's 45 minutes away, start collecting what these different resources and who these different people are. And I would say, don't be afraid to look outside the box. So the first original person that I went to wasn't actually a doctor. She was technically a nurse practitioner, and they worked in like this wellness office. But she was able to order labs, and we did it like it wasn't through insurance. It was all this weird stuff, but she was able to pull all of the labs I needed. It wasn't very expensive. And so that was this whole different roundabout way of going through that. So I would say, don't be afraid to look outside the box either. I think we often think if it's not through traditional insurance, then it's going to be way too expensive, but traditional insurance stuff is crazy expensive today. So sometimes sometimes the best option is going through something private, paying $200 out of pocket, and just going through it that way. So I would say, be creative, don't be afraid to think outside the box, and then just ask for recommendations. Get in those Facebook groups, find those ones that are the more naturally minded, and ask for recommendations in your area.
Awesome. I love those suggestions. Okay, so the thing that blows my mind is in the midst of all of this, you also had your own business. And so a lot of my audience is either in the process of starting a business or also has a business and special needs kids. So they're right in there too of juggling it all. So tell me about Young Wife's Guide, how that started and how you got to where you are today.
I started my first original blog back in 2009. So it's been almost 11 years that I've been blogging, which is crazy. And back then it was just my little hobby blog. Like I was just talking about where my husband and I were newly married and where we went, to eat for the weekend and whatever. It was just like a little hobby. And then I started seeing people putting together like series, like they were talking about their meal planning for the weekend and their crafting project they were working on. And I started seeing them like actually put like topics together and advice and teaching. And I've always been a teacher at heart. Like that's just in my heart. And so I started seeing some of this and I'm like, oh, I could talk about the meal planning I'm doing. And so it started kind of slowly from there. I started playing with it. And then I started seeing people being able to make some money from putting out their meal planning advice and things like that. And so I just started slowly playing with it. And then in 2012, we launched Young Wife's Guide as like, this is my professional blog. Like, this is my blog where like, I'm going to put those series together and like really do this. So we launched that in 2012. We started doing digital products. We started doing a digital online conference. We started introducing these things. And then somewhere in those years, we started seeing people who were able to build up a full-time income from this, and their husbands were able to quit their jobs and come and work with them full-time for the business. And so somewhere in there, we just really got this bug that Jason and I really wanted to do that. And so we put all of our time and effort into it. And so then in 2015, Jason was able to quit his full-time job in sales. And now he's like our CEO of our company and he runs everything from home, which is just amazing and crazy. And it's really amazing to see where God has brought us in this blogging journey, which I never would have even thought you could make $100 off of. And now it's our family's full-time income.
That's so funny because I was listening to one of your podcasts on a marathon drive to Salt Lake from Houston, which is like 3 days. Mm-hmm. So I like binge listened through like your podcast pretty intensely. My husband was like, I feel like we're best friends with these people.
I love it.
But you were talking about like one of the first products that you put up on your blog back, like way back at the beginning, that was like a gardening guide. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because I think I remember like there was a blog that I came upon that was like something about young wives, and I was like engaged at the time, and I was like, this is so cool. And I had every intent, like I think I subscribed or something, but just kind of lost touch. Mm-hmm. And then just like 2 or 3 years ago, re-engaged into what you're doing. And now with Jason on board, like your business is so big and you're everywhere and doing amazing things. And I was just like, man, I wish I had stayed in touch all this time, but that's okay. So it's just
That
kind
is
of
so
funny. It's
funny.
like, oh, we did touch base at one point.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's so funny. I love it.
Okay, so the conference. So the idea of a virtual conference is just so intriguing to me. Tell me how that idea came about and what your vision is with that.
Well, it's so funny. I've talked to Jason. This is going to be in the fall, is going to be our 6th annual online conference. And I tell Jason all the time, I don't know what was wrong with me that back in 2014, I just was like, I'm going to do an online conference because it's a big task. Like it's like putting on an in-person conference. It's that big. And so I just was like, I don't know why. It's just one of those things that God, I think, led us to. Cause like now I'm like, I don't know what got it into my brain that I was just going to take on this massive project and do it. But I'm so thankful that I did. But I think the stirrings of it came from, at the time, I had 1-year-old twins at home. I was yearning for that community, for being able to learn from other women, to have that encouragement in our days when things feel mundane and monotonous. And where do we go for joy and encouragement in that community? And I really felt like that was missing. And at the time, I would have loved to do an in-person conference. Like that was what, like, I want to be in a room with a group of women, but it wasn't feasible. I had 1-year-old twins. Even just, making dinner was enough struggle to like get through the day. And so I started thinking of like an online community to be able to bring this together. And so that's where the kind of the online conference came about, because I'm like, we could do a Facebook group and have that community. We could have all the sessions and teaching. And so my heart with the conferences each year is to make it feel as much as possible like you are in a real in-person conference and we're all sitting around drinking coffee. But you don't have to travel. You don't have to pay for a hotel in the air flight. You don't have to arrange babysitting, all that stuff. We can do it sitting in our pajamas on our couch with a cup of coffee. And we still have that community and that encouragement from all getting to be together. And so I think that's kind of the sparks of where it started. And now we're on our 6th one, which is amazing. And it is the highlight of my year every year.
I think what's really awesome about the way that it's set up is, for you mamas listening who are in the hospital with your children, longing for that community, you can plug into this. You can hit pause when the doctor comes in or when your child needs you and come right back to it. So I think that that's one of the really awesome things about how this functions is, for those of you who are on the endless journey of waiting for a heart transplant or something along those lines, you can totally engage in this and find community and that restoration for your soul that I know is so dry right now. So tell me about this year's theme, because I'm really, really excited about this.
Yeah, this is like, I think, my favorite theme we've had. So we have a new theme each year that we kind of try to revolve the sessions around, because the content is 100% new every single year. It's all new sessions and speakers. And so the theme this year is creating a gospel-centered home. So we're developing all of the resources to kind of ping pong off of that main theme. And then we have some super practical stuff too. Like we have Jamarelle Stewart from Large Family Table. She's going to be teaching an entire session on freezer cooking and how that can like transform your kitchen. So we have some really practical stuff in like that. And then we have some really good ones on like how to find gospel-centered relationships, how to do family devotions, how to center yourself around the gospel. So really kind of everything is outflowing from that theme of creating a gospel-centered home. And one thing that I really love that we do with these conferences is they're for all women. So we're very, very conscious that there's all manner of women who are speaking or who are listening in. Women who don't have kids, women who do, women who work outside the home, women who homeschool, like all across the gamut. So there might be a couple sessions directly on parenting, but the entire conference is designed for any woman who's listening in who needs that encouragement in the Lord. So no matter what circumstance you find yourself in, we are all striving to create a gospel-centered home, no matter what our individual circumstances look like. And I think that's something that's really unique, because a lot of times you only find these resources that are geared towards a very specific type of woman in a very specific set of circumstances. And so I really love being able to bring this message to any woman who's listening, and for that joy and encouragement in their home.
Which I think that whole aspect of your ministry and what you do about really like homemaking and that concept, because I mean, up until 5 years ago, if you'd asked me what a homemaker was, I'd say my grandma, like someone who just stays at home, and I don't really know what she did, but
Mm-hmm.
like she took care of the kids and did laundry, and she like, that's what, occupation, homemaker. As a nurse, a lot of my clients were occupation homemaker. Like that's just like how you would say like I didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And today I would say we probably don't define homemaker that way. And that was the thing of like, I was trying to find the words to say, like my house, like I'm getting married, my home doesn't feel like a home. And there's a structure and organization that I feel like as the woman, like God has created like these notions in me of that I need to set up my home in a specific way. But I have no idea what to call that. I have no idea what to do with that. And in my random searching, I think on Pinterest, I maybe came across your blog again, and that's how I got sucked back in.
I love it.
But I love that. I just love that that's your ministry in your heart, and like giving words to that and like defining how we do that. And even so specifically this year, centering that around the gospel, that's something that I think we've been really striving to do, but in the chaos of the last 16 months with my son in and out of the hospital, we have definitely struggled to know like the rhythms and routines of how to do that. And that's another thing with your ministry that you talk so well about is routines that I also struggle with. So basically I'm just like, I'm about all the things.
Well, and it's true though, like when you're going through seasons of intense overwhelm, whether it's having 5 kids in 4 years, having your son in the hospital, losing someone who's close to you, like there's all of these big life events that happen that can be so overwhelming. And I think it's in those moments when we're utterly overwhelmed, the house feels completely utter chaos, your life feels chaos, and you're like, what do I do? Like, where do I turn first? What are some clear steps out of this? Like, just I've been so often in that just like utter survival mode where you're like, I don't even know what my first step is. And so I think that's always been a really big piece of my heart is no matter what your circumstances are, because they probably look very different than the overwhelm I've been in, but how can we really turn to the Lord in that? Where do we go? What are practical resources? Because I'm a really big believer in that we need to be going to the Lord first and foremost. We need to be tuning our hearts to him, making sure that he is a priority. But when we're in, and that's definitely number one, but when we're in these really intense season of overwhelm, there's often very practical things within our home that we also need to be pairing with that we do need to be working on. There's some life-saving, sanity-saving things that we can do within our home that are extremely practical, that when you pair those with the right perspective of focusing on the Lord, that's when I think we can start to make some progress in feeling like there's a little more sanity going on in amidst all the craziness.
You put it beautifully. Yes, exactly the thing. Can you explain to me a little bit about what engaging in a virtual conference looks like? Are the videos, is everything kind of Facebook driven, just in like a private Facebook group, or how does that look? Someone's thinking about participating in this, like what do they need to be prepared for if they're trying to think if this is a good fit for them right now?
So I really love the way that we set ours up. What we do is we have all of the conference sessions pre-recorded. What I love about this is it really takes away some of the issues with technology of not being able to listen in and not being able to plug in and things like that. So we've made it so I want to make it as easy to access as possible. So we've pre-recorded everything, and then they're going to be released at certain points so that it's like an in-person conference. So you'll have a schedule that Monday morning, the first session goes live at 8, you can get in and listen to it. But the amazing part with that, like you were saying earlier, is that you can pause it. You can pause it. Whereas if these were live streams, you wouldn't be able to do that and you'd miss them and all that. So you can pause, you can go take care of your kids, you can come back, you can hit unpause, you can go into the evening, you can do it around your work schedule or whatever. So what you're going to get is you're going to get a login to our access area, which is where you can access all of the conference sessions as they go live. And you're going to get lifetime access to those, which is awesome. So you can just, if it takes you 6 months to get in and watch the sessions, great. They're there for you. If it takes you a year and a half, they're still there for you, which is awesome. Because I know that's what happens. Or if it just takes you that long to get in and slowly listen through them or re-listen when you need to. So you're going to get that whole access area where you can go in and access all of those videos, all of the sessions. All of the sessions come with notes and note pages and outlines so you can take notes and follow along the way. You're also going to get a digital conference notebook that has like all of that together, like you would get at an actual conference that has all of the outlines and things like that. And then there is a private Facebook group that is optional, because I do know we have certain people who attend the conference who do not have Facebook. They don't want Facebook. And so they don't do the optional community, which is fine if you don't want to. But the community part on the Facebook is where it's really fun. It's like a party all week long where everybody's asking questions and sharing resources and saying, hey, I'm really struggling with meal planning in this way. What do you guys do? And everybody can jump in and share. The speakers are in the hour after their session goes live. The speakers are going to be in the Facebook group sharing about their session, and people can ask questions. And so you actually have that whole hour to access the speakers, which is really fun. So that Facebook group is the really fun community part of it. And I always tell people, if you don't have Facebook, you can just create like a fake profile. Just create a profile for that week. You don't have to add friends to it. Nobody even knows you have to have it. And then you can access the Facebook group to at least have that community. And then you can delete Facebook again if you want afterwards. But that's a really easy way if you don't have Facebook to kind of get in and participate with us, because that community part, I think, is everybody's favorite part every year. We're able to take the lessons and the things we're learning in the sessions and talk about them and share ideas. And that's where we get that community and that fun and those friendships that spring up through the conference.
Yeah, that's amazing. As I think as a special needs mom, because your kid can't necessarily go to play dates or go to preschool or some of those things, like you can't get out to go and create community. And sometimes even going to church is a real obstacle. Mm-hmm. And so I know that longing for community is so huge for the special needs families specifically. And so I'm really excited about this and for us to be able to connect and engage this way. I think you are running a special on tickets through the end of the month. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can get your super early bird conference ticket. It's going to be $20 off the total price. You can get it for just $39.99. And that gives you full and complete access to everything. We really want to keep this as affordable as possible so that people can attend it. And there's 24 amazing speakers this year. Our lineup of speakers are awesome. All of the sessions. So if you head over to the conference page, you can see all those details. You can see who the speakers are, what the sessions are. You can watch a video to kind of see a little more sneak peek into the conference. But this year is shaping up to be awesome. It's going to be an amazing year. I'm very excited.
I'm really excited. And we'll have the links in the show notes for you all for everything. Since we're on a podcast, obviously we've got some podcast listeners here. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your podcast too, in case they want to go subscribe there?
Yeah, awesome. So I have a podcast over, it's called Homemaking Foundations. And basically everything we've been talking about today is what I talk about on the podcast. So I talk about, what do you do when you're overwhelmed? How do you find joy in your home? How do you grow closer to the Lord? Meal planning tips. Basically anything that I'm dealing with in my life is what I'm sharing with you on the podcast. So you can come along on my journey with me. And the podcast is like my favorite thing. That's where I share all of my content every week. So you can come join me. You can find it on my website, youngwifesguide.com, or you can also find it over on iTunes just by searching for Homemaking Foundations. It'll come right up, or you can search for my name.
Awesome. And that's why my husband feels like we're best friends, because your podcast is just like what's going on in your life that week.
Yeah. Just sharing.
It's like, I feel like we just like went to a barbecue with them or something.
I love it.
And then, okay, so I haven't bought this yet. We've had a really tight summer in our budget, but it's on my wish list for the next couple of weeks. But tell me about your bread making course, because you have converted me into a fresh ground grains bread kind of person. So tell me all about that.
Okay. So this is a course that I have been asked for about a year. We finally got it together. It's called Freshly Milled, and it's a course for using freshly ground grains, which sounds completely crazy and is something that your grandmother would have done. And you're like, why would you grind your own grains at home? But what I've actually discovered is like the health of grinding your own grains is absolutely phenomenal. It's great for families who are gluten-free or who have gluten sensitivities or specific allergies where you're buying all fancy food anyway, and it's really difficult. But the health is absolutely phenomenal. I have some podcast episodes if you guys want to listen to it, if you're interested. And it fits in so well to my routine because it actually doesn't take very much time at all, which sounds totally counterintuitive, but it's a quick, fast process. I'm able to make really amazing snacks for my kids. I make healthy muffins all the time. We make healthy pancakes, stuff that's actually nourishing for my kids. And it's very affordable. It's actually cheaper in most cases. And so I have just fallen in love with this whole thing of grinding your own grains at home, which I know sounds completely crazy, but it's actually awesome. And I completely love it.
The little bits that we've done so far, I agree with you. I don't feel like it's actually any more difficult. Like you add one little extra step to what you're doing, and like the difference in taste.
Oh my gosh,
is enough to be like, nope, this is what we're doing. Like,
yes,
yeah, it tastes so much better, and like I think just the way you feel after eating, like if you the same thing, like the exact same thing. If you were making the exact same muffin and you use store-bought flour versus fresh ground flour, like how you feel afterwards when it tastes better, but it's more satisfying. It's like you don't feel the ickies afterwards. So good.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. So you can come listen. I have a couple podcast episodes that describe like why you would even want to do this, how to fit it into a busy schedule. So you can come listen to those episodes if you guys are curious at all at this weird thing that we do.
I'll link a couple of those specifically in the show notes too. So
okay, awesome.
Archive.
The one thing I didn't mention is for the theme for our conference this year is called Creating a Gospel-Centered Home. And with that, we are right now working on preparing a free resource for everybody who purchases a conference ticket. It's going to be released sometime in September, and it's called the Gospel-Centered Home Toolkit. And so with this toolkit, we've interviewed 6 or 7 different like older godly couples who are now looking back on their life and asking them questions of like what they would do differently, what they've done well, tips for marriage, tips for parenting, things like that. So it's going to be a whole like video course basically. And then we're making some like PDF printable resources, things to help you facilitate family worship and things like that. So this is going to be an entire toolkit that we're putting together that'll be worth, I think, $40, and you get it for free whenever you get your conference ticket, and it'll be released sometime in September. And so the reason we're putting this together is so you have something to start working through and going through now, because the conference isn't till November 5th through 8th. So you can start working through all of these resources now before the actual conference. And I'm really, really excited about this resource.
That is really exciting. And also good to know that the conference isn't like for all those who are like, school just started, I can't add another thing.
Yes.
Like buy now because the tickets are cheaper, and it's not till November when you're in routine and everything is calm.
You have time to breathe.
Yes. And then even if it's not calm, it's okay because it's all recorded and you can come back to it.
You can watch it whenever.
Yes. Okay. So real quick, so you're total book nerd and you talk a lot about your books that you love to read on your podcast all the time. And so with the whole creating a gospel center home, like that's the first thing I was wondering. I'm not sure I've heard you talk about these books yet on your podcast, so I was curious if you'd read them. Gospel Fluency by Jeff Vanderstelt and You Can Change by Tim Chester. Have you read either of those yet?
I have not.
Okay, you have to add them to your list because both of them are like very much about like fleshing out like even the simplest things about how the gospel applies to that. So like one of the
I love that
Vanderstelt uses is like his kids are playing Candyland and they get into a fight, and he's like talking to them about how the gospel informs how they treat their siblings in the midst of playing Candyland. And it was like, boom, okay, I get the gospel in a totally different light now. So definitely those.
And so practical. I love that.
So I found it really helpful as I was reading them actually when my son was in the midst of everything. I don't know if you know this part of my story, but my son was born with half a heart in April of last year. And so he had to have open heart surgery 2 weeks after he was born, and then another open heart surgery about 4 months old, and in and out of the hospital and all of that. And then like tube feedings and all of that afterwards because he struggled. He's doing fantastic now. We 100% oral eating and loves mama's fresh ground grain muffins.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like just he's still behind developmentally, but he's crawling and so close to walking. He's 16 months now.
Oh, that's awesome.
All of the hospital stuff, reading these books was really like so good to remind myself of like in my anxiety, in my stress, in my worries of like is my son going to make it to tomorrow? And can I survive the stress of not knowing what tomorrow holds? Books were so foundational to like reminding me of who God is and who I am in this chaos. So if you're like really in that place right now of really needing to know where the gospel is in your life, those are really great books to get you started. And how about you, Jami, and all of your millions of books that you read? Like you read so fast. Do you have any other recommendations for if they're just really needing like some grounding in the gospel right now?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite books is called Glimpses of Grace by Gloria Furman. And it's really, really helpful because she's coming from a very good perspective of like, what do you do when you feel like your days are like mundane and you're kind of on that like circle of like, get up today, go to bed, get up today. Like when you feel like those days are on mundane and on repeat, how do we find God's glory within those days? How do we get a good perspective in those hard seasons? And how do we keep God first and foremost in front of us when you're walking through those seasons? And that book has been one that's been really, really helpful for me, just walking through that. And then there's another really tiny book called What is the Gospel by Greg Gilbert. And it's just it's just a quick summary of what the gospel actually is, because this is a topic we talk about all the time. The gospel-centered home, gospel this, gospel that. But what does that actually mean, and how does it impact our daily lives? Not just when we became believers, but in our day-to-day lives every single day, especially if you're trying to teach it to your kids and teach it and talk about it. What is the Gospel by Greg Gilbert is a great tiny little manual that just makes it very succinct so you can get in and read it. And it's a really good one, I think, especially as your kids start to get older, to go through even as a study with your whole family, or you and your husband go through it. But it's a really good reminder of like, what actually is the gospel and why do we care on a daily basis?
That's so good. And I love Gloria Furman. So that's a really good recommendation. Thank you.
I love her. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This time has been so amazing. And so I will include all the resources we've talked about, links in the show notes, and including links to Jami's podcast if you have any more questions. And I think that about wraps that up. Thank you. Okay, so I know you now want to go check out all things Jami Balmet. So go to the show notes at momsofheart.com/013 and you'll find all the links to all the things. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure and take a screenshot and share it with a friend that you know would love it too. Let's continue this conversation about centering our homes around the gospel. Come connect with me on social media at Moms of Heart. Until next time.